Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Hatman Strikes Back Daily Boxing News. Shout out to everyone in the live chat. We got some boxing to talk about in this live stream. Will kind of morph into a night flight show because we got through the majority of the current boxing news in yesterday's live stream. But we do have to talk about Jai Opetaia leaving Eddie Hearn and signing with Dana White Zuffa Boxing. Okay, we'll talk about that. But before we get to it, as always, I'd like to big up everybody. We got Julius in the chat. We got Yamakazi, Chris Santos, Chrissy G. We got Rankin. We got Al Joe. All right, those are the people currently locked in. Let's have a look at the number of viewers we got at the moment. 50 concurrent viewers. How many likes we got? Do we have any? 10 likes. If we can get 25 likes, it'll be much appreciated. Let's keep the concurrent viewers to like ratio at least 50%, please. Thank you in advance. I really appreciate it. When you just stick a like on these streams, it really helps with the visibility. All right? Shout out to Rep 2016 RTM. Shout out to Let Me Tell You Something, Afro Soul. What's up, what's up? Wave says Eddie didn't even promote Jai Opetaia's last fight. Hatman Jai was a free agent. Well, Jai Opetaia and Eddie Hearn have always had a co-promotional contract. So it's not that Jai Opetaia was exclusive to Eddie Hearn. He never was. He was always with Tasman Fighters and Eddie Hearn. So he hadn't necessarily left Eddie Hearn in his last fight because it was promoted by Tasman in Australia, right? Now that he's signed to Zuffa Boxing, presumably he's not going to be fighting on DAZN anymore. Don't Zuffa Boxing have a deal with, is it Paramount? That's where they're going to be putting their shows on. Whereas Opetaia's last fight was on DAZN. It was just a Zuffa Boxing show in Australia. Now there's some interesting details that a lot of people won't be aware of regarding this Jai Opetaia move here to Zuffa Boxing Dana White. A lot of people won't expect some of the details here. We'll get onto it. Big up KO Talk for the super chat. He says, wow, Opetaia now getting paid 25K a fight. Big up Fat Tony. Should we jump right into it here? Let's jump right into it. So, this is from Ring Magazine Socials. Opetaia signs promotional deal with Zuffa Boxing. This is from the Fight Hype Instagram page, I believe. Jai Opetaia signing with Zuffa Boxing is massive and exciting. Let's get this bigger on my screen. Is massive news and exciting for him and his team, aligning with elite power forces in Zuffa Boxing at the highest level to make these unification and undisputed fights, along with growing his brand and star power worldwide. So there we get the first surprise for most people, because Dana White has said that he will not work with the sanctioning bodies and he won't work with other promoters. It remains to be seen whether he'll stick to his word regarding not working with the sanctioning bodies. The only belts he says he'll recognize are the Zuffa belt and the Ring Magazine belt. Okay? But if you look here, you know, Opetaia, according to Fight Hype, Opetaia is looking forward to becoming undisputed. And I'm going to read from a TalkSport article which gives a lot of detail on the situation. All right? So hold tight here. It's quite a long article. Again, big up KO Talk for the super chat. But listen to this article here. So, the terms of the deal were not disclosed, While it remains unclear if Opetaia will compete exclusively under the Zuffa Boxing banner, a press release from Opetaia's co-promoter, Tasman Fighters, was curiously accompanied by a poster with the bold lettering "Road to Undisputed" printed across it. Zuffa Boxing is intent upon disregarding the full sanctioning bodies and is pushing hard for the Muhammad Ali Revival Act to be passed through Congress in order to establish its own separate world titles and rankings. Opetaia has been chasing unifications fights with the other champions at 200 pounds to no avail and has expressed an unwavering desire to become undisputed champion during his announcement video. He said, quote, "I'm with Zuffa Boxing now. I'm pumped for the future. Exciting times, man. Let's get these big fights over the line. Unification and Undisputed 2, let's go." Now, it remains to be seen how easily his dream will be to achieve, we've messed up the grammar here. It remains to be seen how easy his dream will be to achieve now that he has joined forces with White, who told Stephen A. Smith recently in an interview, quote, "I'm going to get rid of the sanctioning organizations," unquote. That being said, White also declared that he wouldn't be working with any of the other promoters, only to enter into a co-promotional deal with Tasman Fighters. So again, according to TalkSport, they have heard that this will be a co-promotional deal. This will not be just Zuffa Boxing. It will be Zuffa Boxing and Tasman Fighters, just as it was when Jai Opetaia was signed to Eddie Hearn. And we'll come on to Eddie Hearn in a moment, but I'll just continue with the article now. Nick Francis, CEO of Tasman Fighters, said this: "This is an incredibly exciting partnership for everyone involved. Jai Opetaia is already a world champion, but we firmly believe he is going to establish himself as a major name in the United States and beyond. This partnership puts him exactly where he belongs, on the biggest of platforms against the biggest opponents. Jai is leading the way for Australian boxing right now. He's shown what's possible with hard work, discipline, and belief, and this is only the beginning. There are more developments ahead, and we're extremely confident about what the future holds." Okay, that is again from Tasman Fighters themselves. Opetaia had previously been co-promoted by Eddie Hearn's Matchroom Boxing. I'm now reading from the TalkSport article again here. He'd previously been co-promoted by Eddie Hearn's Matchroom Boxing. However, Tasman and Matchroom's partnership ended last year. The last time Opetaia stepped between the ropes in December to dispatch mandatory challenger Hussein Sin Cara inside 8 rounds, Matchroom was not involved in that particular event. All right, so a lot to get through here. Firstly, Dana White saying he won't be working with other promoters, contradicted here by working with Tasman Fighters. You know, when you're trying to get your foot in the door in the industry, and when you're trying to do the kind of radical things in a sport like Dana White is trying to do, you're not going to necessarily be able to stick to your guns from day one completely. You might need to have a bit more power in the game by way of signing a lot more major talent before you can start completely disregarding belts, completely disregarding other promoters, so on and so forth. So I think that's more of a long-term strategy for Dana White based upon this particular situation. Now, people are saying this is a bad move for Opetaia. He's going to get chicken change. I can't imagine he's making a lot of money now. I suspect he is being offered more to fight under Zuffa Boxing than he was being offered by Eddie Hearn fight by fight, or that he was getting with Eddie Hearn and with Tasman Fighters fight by fight. I don't think that Dana White and the rest of them, Nick Khan, Turki Al-Sheikh, would have had to break the bank in order to secure Opetaia's signature. Yes, he's an elite fighter, but he isn't an elite fighter with a huge profile and therefore huge commercial value at the moment. In fact, I think that Dana White has really struck gold here with Jai Opetaia, because Jai Opetaia if you compare, his excitement, entertainment value in the ring, it's very comparable to a lot of UFC fighters. Like Dana White has preferential treatment towards UFC fighters who are really exciting. And Jai Opetaia brings thrills and spills like that. He has the kind of, 100-yard stare. He's like bred from Samoan warriors. So I think he is a type of character that Dana White really understands. And again, the entertainment value and all that type of stuff, I think he sees something in Opetaia that he can really market, because he's done something similar with people like Mark Hunt and, other Pacific Islanders and whatnot in the UFC. So I think he perhaps can bring in a lot of the audience that would follow certain, Pacific Island UFC fighters, bring them over to follow Jai Opetaia. So I think this is actually a really, really good move for Dana White. It remains to be seen whether it's a good move for Opetaia, because he's always wanted undisputed. Can Dana White deliver that? If these Zuffa boxing events are going to be on Paramount, and last I checked they're going to be, then is it Paramount or Disney? I think it's Paramount, isn't it? You guys correct me in the live chat if I'm wrong. That then introduces a problem, like in the old days of boxing, whereby one champion's on one network and the other champions are on a different network. So you got Zerto Ramirez, who's still on DAZN last I checked, and now Opetaia potentially will not be on DAZN. So how are they going to work that out? It can be worked out, don't get it twisted. But sometimes, most times even, when fighters are on different networks, it's an extra obstacle and makes a fight more difficult to actually get across the line. And that's what people are criticizing here about Jai Opetaia. They're saying you're going to get paid not that much, and it's going to be difficult to get the fights made if you're on a different broadcaster. So let me know what you guys think about this in the comments. Okay, Desi says, Jai moving like Broner on the business and certainly not the sharpest tool. All right, Afro Jam trying to come with some Bahamian slang there. Well, mother sick. What's happening, Afro Jam? Amy says, back once again for the Renegade. Okay, for the Renegade Master. Big up, Hatman. Will Opetaia signing with Zuffa derail the plans to fight the winner of Benavidez Zerto? I hope not. But as I've just laid out here, it introduces an extra layer of complexity to the situation. And you do have to question Opetaia's move. I mean, maybe they'll get it done. Maybe because of the power of Dana White and Zuffa boxing and Turkey El-Sheikh. Maybe as kind of like a one-off, not necessarily a one-off, but when you first enter the boxing market, you're gonna have to do things that you don't intend to do long-term in order to corner the market. So maybe they're gonna pay Jai Opetaia a lot more money than they would want to pay him, Maybe he's being rewarded for being the first incumbent top-level world champion to make that move. Maybe he's getting in early and reaping the benefits from that financially. But as far as will it bring him closer to undisputed, we'll see. Yeah, big up Cropperting. So NHYT says, Eddie doesn't pay his fighters as much as people think he does. He wouldn't even enter the purse bid for Dalton Smith, who ended up making $700K. Frank pays even less. Well, it depends on the fighter, and it depends on their commercial value. Eddie Hearn pays his top fighters, his top earning fighters, far more than their UFC equivalents. Way more. And the same for Frank Warren. Now, from what I've heard, from fighters over the years, generally speaking, Frank Warren actually pays more, particularly when it comes to signing new talent. He tends to, offer new talent more money than Eddie Hearn does. So, for example, even Anthony Joshua, when he first was, he came out of the Olympics, he was looking for a pro deal. He said, well, actually, I think it was Eddie Hearn that said it publicly, that Frank Warren offered Anthony Joshua more money than Hearn did. You know what I mean? And that's why Eddie Hearn was so impressed and happy that AJ signed with him, because that wasn't the biggest offer on the table for AJ. But he obviously liked the Sky platform and he saw the vision, and maybe he liked Eddie and Barry. Who knows? But yeah, it really depends on the fighter. But when it comes to signing new talent fresh out the amateurs, from what I've heard over the years, at this stage of the game anyway, Frank Warren tends to offer more, which is why he's signed so many of them and Eddie Hearn has signed so few of them. Okay? Now, Eddie Hearn and his dad Barry, just as Frank Warren has accused them of over the years, are basically accountants. That's the way they think. It's all about the numbers. And if they don't see a particular amount of commercial value in a fighter, well, they're not going to pay him what he wants or what his rivals are necessarily getting. They're going to pay him an amount of money which will allow them to make profit on top of putting on the show. If that's $700K or whatever the case may be, that's what they're going to pay him. But if they've got a cash cow, a real ticket seller, well, they pay him an awful lot more. So it really is contingent on a fighter's commercial value, the amount of attention a fighter draws, the amount of eyes that are on his fights. We got B-Tech Grime in the chat. He says, annoyed by this decision, surely the Zerdo fight is even further away now. Let's hope not, but it's a reasonable assumption. Afro Jam says, yeah, Jai on the West Coast will be popular, or Hawaii. Yeah, I can see it. If they can really push Jai out to that UFC audience, I think he's somebody that could really sell, because Jai Opetaia is no nonsense. He's got that 100-yard stare. He's got that Pacific Islander Samoan warrior thing going on. And I think that would go down really well as a crossover. I'm not talking about being involved in crossover fights necessarily, but just as having crossover appeal between the different sports of boxing and MMA. Big up Striker. Wave says, the other champs have a valid reason to not fight Jai now, and I don't blame them. Tony S says, Zerdo wasn't going to fight Jai anyway, and that's the thing. For those saying it's a bad move by Jai Opetaia, he was waiting around forever to fight Zerdo. Even David Benavidez, if he were to beat Zerdo Ramirez, was totally non-committal on taking on Jai Opetaia. So, what's Opetaia going to do? I made several videos recently regarding this situation, and I said, you know what? I think Opetaia should just move up to heavyweight, because he's wasting his prime years treading water, basically. That's all he's doing, is treading water. Why tread water against less than stellar opposition? Sometimes you fight down to the level of that opposition. Why not, strike while the iron is hot, while he's still in his prime, move up to heavyweight and see what he can do now. Opetaia didn't seem particularly keen on doing that. So, as I say, if he's not going to get that unification anyway, maybe it's not such a bad idea signing with Zuffa Boxing, Dana White. Maybe they'll prioritize him, because it's easy for a fighter like Opetaia, who is very good, but isn't a big commercial star, to feel like he isn't being prioritized. He feels like he's maybe the runt of the litter. with a Matchroom or even a Queensbury, you know? And it is interesting that he didn't sign with Queensbury, isn't it? Because I'm sure he could have done. Yeah, now, as things stand right now, because Zuffa Boxing has got such a small stable, Jai Opetaia will be a big fish in a small pond, comparatively speaking, right? Whereas under the Matchroom banner, he was just one of however many fighters. He wasn't being prioritized. He wasn't being pushed the way that he wanted to be pushed, marketed the way that he wanted to be marketed. We got Arman. Says, even though Dana is the enemy. Yep, Jai's style is appealing. We got Jack Sheridan. He says, oh yeah, he's right to go if he's pushed as a star. There, it's a win for him. Yep. Indeed, Jai did get fed up with Fast Car. Fast Car ultimately just could not deliver the fights he wants. Couldn't do it. Maybe Fast Car had his hands tied. Maybe he tried his best. But if you try your best and still don't get results, the fighter's got to jump ship. It's as simple as that. He's only got one career. JB says, I thought Dana didn't like the belts. Indeed. We'll have to wait and see what happens on that one. He also said he won't work with other promoters, but here he is, entering into a co-promotional deal with Tasman Fighters. Just like Eddie Hearn was in a co-promotional deal with Tasman Fighters. Dana White too here. Did I see AJ training with Khabib's crew? No, I didn't. That's random. First he's training with Usyk's crew. Now Khabib's crew, they're not even boxers. Ali says, I understand why Jai has made this move. Okay, give me your take on it, Ali. I'd be very interested to hear it or read it. We All Sinner says, but we all knew him because of Eddie, though. I knew him after the Johnson fight. No, I knew him long before he signed with Eddie Hearn. I knew him from the first Breeders' fight. That's when I knew Opetaia. I never heard of him before then, but from the first Breeders' fight, that's when I knew him from. Arman says, who is Dana doing business with to make fights happen? Turkey? Yes, Turkey Al Sheikh is involved in Zuffa Boxing. TKO is the umbrella organization. TKO is Nick Khan, Turkey Al Sheikh, Zuffa Boxing, Dana White. So that's the setup as I understand it. Okay, Amy says, is Badou Jack getting WBC privileges as well? I can't remember the last time he defended it. Yeah, he lost last time out. So he's no longer WBC champion. It is now Noel Mikhailian. He's the current WBC champion. That's who Badou Jack lost to. Jai Opetaia IBF champion. Gilberto Ramirez WBA WBO champion. They smile in your face. All the while they want to take your place. So that's the main topic of conversation with regards to boxing. This evening we can get onto other boxing topics if you wish. Or we can drift off and start talking about non-boxing related things too. It's all good. As I said at the start here, this can kind of merge into a night flight show if you guys prefer. Or if there is any other boxing news you want to discuss, just drop it in the chat. We'll talk about it. They smile in your face. All the while they want to take your place. Okay, Andrew McDowell says, I can see Eddie selling Matchroom so he can become a billionaire. Eddie is past his prime. That's an interesting comment. Is Eddie Hearn past his prime? Has he lost his mojo? He certainly comes across as a little desperate these days, doesn't he? He doesn't have that same level of self-assuredness that he used to. That's the way he comes across anyway in interviews and whatnot. Big up Charles B in the chat. Okay, interesting comment there from Arman. He says, what do you think about Kelly? I'm betting him over Murtazalayev. I'm picking Murtazalayev to win, but you never know. Josh Kelly does have a lot of athleticism. He's fast, quick hands, reflexes, all that type of stuff. But he's kind of fallen into the category of more style than substance throughout most of his career. You know? He was obviously stopped by Avanesian at 147 pounds, moved up to 154. He's been on a winning run since, but against Ishmael Davis, he was in all sorts of trouble late on in that fight. Ishmael Davis, not noted as a massive puncher, and he took the fight on very short notice. He had Josh Kelly on ice skates. But I guess on the positive side, he did manage to beat Troy Williamson, who had a very good win recently over Callum Simpson. He beat him without any trouble whatsoever. Okay, so Ali says, do you know Usyk has recently spoke to AJ and said he had desire in his voice to continue boxing for the two close brothers he lost in the car crash? I don't know that. Where did you hear that? Afro Soul says Josh Kelly is trash. Arman says Murtazalayev seems stiff. I'm hoping Josh can move well. Lewis Spencer says, why are so many heavyweights so poor with cardio compared to Usyk, etc.? Because Usyk is not the norm, you know? In the same way, it's like saying, why are most sprinters so slow compared to Usain Bolt? Do you know what I mean? It's like, yo, everyone doesn't have the same capacity for stamina. Most heavyweights are much bigger than Usyk, for one, and they just don't have the same capacity. So they can train as hard as they possibly can. They can put all the effort into it. They're never going to have his fitness. Yeah, not everyone has the same max out level of fitness. Some people's fitness maxes out at a much lower level. A big up Ben Oldham for the super chat. Much appreciated, my guy. Hope you're doing good. Yeah, AJ posted some stuff where he appears to be back in the gym, but is that old footage that he's posted, or is it from actual live streams he's done recently? I'm not sure. I don't follow AJ on social media like that. Wave says Josh Kelly is going to school Murtazalayev, Hatman. If he does school Murtazalayev, this will be quite a resurgence for British boxing, won't it? With Dalton Smith just winning the world title. If Josh Kelly goes ahead and does the same, that's a real good look for British boxing. And British boxing, in terms of world champions, has been hurting, has been down bad over the past couple years. B-Tech Graham says, I think the Netflix documentary put a rocket up Hearn's backside. Been better fights made and fighters signed with decent potential since then. I would agree with that. I mean, I think Terra at heavyweight is quite interesting. He's obviously got Boots Ennis. He's got, you know, a number of different fighters now. We got Ben Oldham every time. You want me to read out any comments there, Ben? Tony S says, I was watching Ali versus Cleveland Williams today, and Ali's movement was mesmeric and cardio insane. Well, you know, Ali back in the 60s weighed between about, 206 pounds and maybe 213, 214. That was his weight range. He was smaller than Usyk. But yeah, his movement was incredible in his prime. Like against Cleveland Williams, madness, the way he was able to move around, the combinations he was reeling off, the shuffle, the rhythm, like everything about Ali at that period of his career, crazy. He was taking the biscuit in that fight. Yeah, that's right. Zuffa Boxing has a TV deal. Somebody's confirming what I said earlier on. They've got a TV deal with Paramount, CBS. Paramount is owned by the second richest man in the world. Brits are underestimating the money involved with this new promotion. And, you know, just like with Eddie Hearn when he first entered the American boxing market, just like Al Heyman when he first set up in boxing, they were paying fighters a lot more money than they pay them now, for the most part, right? So perhaps Dana White is having to bite the bullet a little bit and pay Jai Opetaia a lot more than he would want to pay a guy like that. Sometimes, oftentimes, when a new player is in town, there's an opportunity there for a fighter to get in early and make a load of money. Okay, so Abraham says, do you think because of his name, Eubank Jr. could get a title shot for one of the vacant belts in his debut at 168? I suspect he probably can, but I don't want to see Eubank Jr. fight anymore. He was so bad in that Conor Benn fight, it was scary. The deterioration from one fight to the next was huge. And while he may say it's down to a medical condition, I'm saying that medical condition hasn't popped up at this stage of his career coincidentally. When he's at the back end of his career, when he's aging, what is he now, 37? And he's got, you know, he's been draining his body, he's got this medical condition, he's getting older, his punch resistance is shot. He looks so bad against Conor Benn, it's actually scary to think he wants to continue. I mean, he's made plenty of money. He grew up rich anyway. So this isn't a guy that's going to end up homeless anytime soon. Arman says, so what? So that's who Dana is working with. Yeah, Dana White is working with Nick Khan and Turki El-Sheikh. That's the little trio there that are behind TKO and Zuffa Boxing. Yeah, very similar actually. That's a good comment there from Where's Carlos. Eubank Jr. looked as bad as DeGale when he beat him. Maybe even worse. You know, because DeGale got beaten by a middleweight / super middleweight. Eubank Jr. got beat by a flipping welterweight. He barely threw any damn punches. Crazy. Oh, big up Phil. Answer. So Tony S. says he has a gut feeling the Atama card may get scrapped altogether, citing his injury hasn't recovered. In a new main event, hence the 2-month delay. We shall see. Bad news for Atama if that's the case, right? Let's switch up the visuals here. We will, in fact, some of you guys asked questions about my day. Most of you aren't interested, but for the few who are, what do I get up to? Well, truth be told, I've had a few cheat days recently. Generally, I like to stick to a relatively, if not ketogenic diet, and I do go for long stretches on keto diets. But even when I'm not eating a strictly keto diet, I have very small amount of carbs. But I have to admit, this week has been a cheat week, several cheat days, so I got some photos here. So as you can see there, cheat week. That's 2 T-bone steaks, chicken wings, fries, all right. Ribs obviously here, and a tasty burger. I do love the taste of a good burger. That was my little Samuel L. Jackson, a little ode to Samuel L. Jackson in Pulp Fiction. So yeah, that's what I've been eating this week. Sounded like the guy from The Fast Show for a second. You know that weird character from The Fast Show? This week I've been mainly, you guys know what I'm talking about? The actor, the comedy actor who played that character was the same guy that played the dad of the Weasley family in the Harry Potter movies. Anyway, I'm being totally random here. But yeah, this is what I've been eating this week. All right. 3 separate meals. I didn't eat all this at one sitting. It was on 3 separate days. This was actually today. Had the T-bone steak, fries, and wings. The other time we went there, had ribs. And the time before, burger and fries. There you go. Cheat week. All right, big up Raven on Faith for the super chat. He says, "Hey Hatman, finally catching a live. Thank you for your content. Quick question. I was wondering, what do you think about Sergio Martinez?" So, Sergio Martinez is a very, very impressive boxing story. Because here we have a guy who is Argentinian, obviously, but moved to Spain to pursue his boxing career, which is kind of counterintuitive because Spain doesn't exactly have a strong boxing scene. And Sergio Martinez actually fought in the UK early on in his career. So Martinez is the definition of a fighter who came from obscurity. He really did come from obscurity. And for those who don't know, Martinez has a background, I think, in cycling and football. So he didn't even grow up with like a real hardcore boxing base, you know, in terms of his background and his training. So he kind of comes from other sports, but somehow he ended up in boxing. And he was, to quote John Fury, to paraphrase John Fury, fetched up the hard way in the boxing industry, that is. He didn't have the red carpet rolled out for him or anything like that. Again, an obscure fighter, but he fought his way to the top of the sport. So that's what's so admirable about Sergio Martinez. An athletic guy, obviously, but not the most naturally talented as far as boxing goes. Yeah, so he really had to learn on the job, learn his craft. He obviously suffered some defeats earlier on in his career. But when he had that run at middleweight, he was the man. You know, Sergio Martinez was the man when he had that run at middleweight, and it kind of culminated in that, well, he had 2 fights with Paul Williams. The second fight, spectacular knockout win for Martinez, where he chinned Williams with that massive left hand. And then, of course, he had that win over Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., who was just a massive weight bully. And Sergio Martinez totally schooled him. Remember, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. did beat people like Andy Lee, just using his size and marauding forward and bludgeoning and whatnot. But Sergio Martinez took him to school, but he did have a scare very late on in that fight when he got dropped. And then Sergio Martinez was all over him like white on rice. But yeah, I've always had the most amount of admiration for Sergio Martinez because, again, he wasn't a manufactured fighter at all, wasn't treated with kid gloves, came up the very, very hard way in boxing and made it. So how can you do anything but respect a guy like that? So yeah, that's my take on Sergio Martinez. And he had a fairly exciting style when he was on form, you know? So yeah, good fighter. Big up JR in the chat. Big up Home Wrecking Knee Knocker. Okay. So Lance says Dana will give all the boxers CTE. They'll be in wars all the time for little money. And that is one of the genuine concerns with Dana White being involved in professional boxing is, you know, professional fighters cannot afford to fight as frequently if they're going to be in as many tough fights. Professional boxers, that is, as UFC guys, because they take far more damage, not just in the actual fights themselves, but in the training camps. So that's a legitimate concern. Yeah, it's very sad what happened to Paul Williams. He had a motorcycle accident and unfortunately still doesn't have the use of his legs. Damn. Chrysler says Jai is a traitor to boxing. Okay, that's strong. Black Dynamite says he started boxing at 25 as well. Yeah, he's talking about Sergio Martinez. Again, this is why I respect Sergio Martinez so much. Big up Ryan for the super chat. He says, random question. How well do you think Ricky Burns did with his career considering how limited he was? Love the channel, been a follower since 2015. Big up Ryan. Ricky Burns, I guess you could compare him to Sergio Martinez in that in as much as he kind of came up the hard way, maybe not quite as hard as Sergio Martinez came up, but not a fighter with an enormous amount of natural talent. Ricky Burns definitely overachieved and maxed out what he did have. And he'll always have the great distinction of having Terence Crawford say that he was his most difficult opponent. Do you know what I mean? If a guy in Terence Crawford who's beaten the likes of Canelo Alvarez, Errol Spence, etc., you know, Israel Madrimov and whatnot, if that guy's turning around and saying, no, Ricky Burns gave him my toughest fight, that's quite a compliment. Big up Supersized Fries. I missed this super chat. Apologies. Let me try and find it here. It says, how's life, Hatman? I still need that silver era boxing career reviews, 20s, 30s, etc. And maybe some new fantasy matchups. Love the content as always. Yeah, big up Supersized Fries. I will try to get to more career reviews. The Nigel Benn career review is the next one I'm going to do. I have said I'm going to do that. It's just, you know, a very busy schedule with so many requests for so many different types of videos every day. But yeah, I will try to get to, first and foremost, the Nigel Benn career review. All right, that's what I'm going to be doing next. And that'll be, I don't know, a pretty long video, I'd imagine. You know, close to an hour or more. Big up Supersized Fries. Much appreciated for the super chat. JR says, Hatman, do you have any phobias? I'm terrified of flying even though I've never let it stop me traveling. It gets me every time. So I've got a very weird phobia, a couple of weird phobias, right? One of my phobias, and this, even just talking about it, is giving me the heebie-jeebies, all right? I hate, God, even now, it's making my skin crawl just thinking about it. I hate wooden lollipop sticks. I can't touch them. I can't put a wooden lollipop stick on my tongue. Even now, it's hard to talk about it, bro. Yeah, that's a weird phobia, innit? But I've had that phobia since a very young age. I can't even stand touching them, bro. And I don't really have a phobia of paper straws, but I definitely don't like them. Yeah, I don't like the feel of paper straws, the fact they get soggy. You know what I mean? I don't like paper straws. Oh, wow. Chris says he has the same thing. He doesn't like the wooden lollipop sticks. Yeah, it's like nails down. It's exactly what it's like for me. The wooden lollipop sticks is exactly like nails down a chalkboard. I can't stand it, bro. It makes my skin crawl. I can't stand them. God, that's why I won't get lollipops, bro, because the wooden lollipop stick, I can't deal with it. I can't deal with it. Yo, even just talking about it, the thought of it, do you know what I mean? Sends shivers down my spine. It's horrible. Oh wow, Charles B says cotton wool is his phobia. Ben Odom says wooden disposable cutlery. Yeah, that's from the devil as well. Wooden disposable cutlery. That's from the devil. Work of the devil. All right, Dr. Wu says pigeons are my phobia. Yeah, the doctors used to use that same thing, like a wooden type thing that they put in your mouth to look inside your throat and all that. But that's not where the phobia came from. I had the phobia before that. Yeah, the phobia long predated visiting a GP. Ever since I was a little kid, I always hated them wooden lollipop sticks. The feel of them, horrible, horrible. And yeah, paper straws are diabolical. And just to show you how pedantic I am, before I left the UK, because you know the UK, they started phasing out paper straws. Started phasing out plastic straws. I went on Amazon and bought several hundred plastic straws. I still got them with me now. Yeah, carrying wherever I go, just in case I come across a restaurant or somewhere that insists on using paper straws. I carry plastic straws with me. Black Dynamite says, you mean lollipop sticks made out of cardboard? Well, they're not made out of cardboard. They're made out of wood. But yeah, they're made out of wood and they're nasty. Sizzler says cockroaches. Well, I definitely don't like cockroaches, but I don't have a phobia of them. So Chris says, I used to know someone who was afraid, like terrified of buttons. Clothes buttons. Okay, that's real weird.